Welcome, everybody, to the Innovation Collective Fireside Chat. As I look around this room, I just see how great our community is. All of you have come together for Innovation Collective to hear someone from our community that has done amazing things, and also to hear some of our success stories as well as from some of our local businesses. So how I'm going to start this chat off is I'm going to bring up David and Tammy Murphy with Chick-fil-A. They are also members of our success team, so they are a big reason that we are here. And if you're also with our success team in the crowd, if you could please just raise your hand so everyone can give you a round of applause. Thanks to all of you out there. I really appreciate it.
Good evening. I am David Murphy. I'm still in training with Chick-fil-A, so all I'm allowed to do is pick up trash in the parking lot. But despite that, I was still asked to come up here and talk to y'all about our Chick-fil-A 5K, 10K, and Kids Fun Run, all benefiting Young Life of Victoria. It's a great partnership we've had for 13 years now. We're glad to be back on the streets of Victoria again this year after being virtual the past 2 years. So I want to encourage you guys. I think the coupon that y'all were giving out has some information on there about the run where you can go online to register for it. But Young Life's just a great ministry, a great partnership with youth in our area, particularly high school kids. They come alongside them and just serve to have a positive influence and just have a positive impact in their lives. But it marries well with Chick-fil-A's values and what our corporate purpose is also. And with that, Tammy's going to talk about volunteers.
Yes. So if any of you wonderful people are up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning, it's a great way to get to network again with people in our community, but also to support the youth. Like David said, it's just a great organization, great ministry. But it's Saturday, April 2nd. If you're interested in volunteering, there's also a website on the coupon that you got, and we would be happy to have you. Or if you have younger students that need volunteer hours, it's a great way for them to get to meet young people too. So thank y'all.
Thank you for all that you guys do for the community. We really appreciate it. So now I'm going to start off also with 5D Steakhouse. If you guys can come up here. They did the catering today. We really appreciate them. They're going to tell you about who they are, what they do, and a new spot they have opening up soon.
Hello. I think it's on, right? Hi, so I'm Alexis Longoria. I am the shift lead bartender with Traveling Tavern. I have been with the company since 2016. We're just here to talk about the tavern that is opening up actually across from Tacos and Tequila restaurant down below. We are going after a high-end cocktail environment. We are going to be serving your top shelf spirits, your craft cocktails, and your beer and your wine. It's going to be your modern, classic environment where you walk in and your lights are dimmed, your classic music, very high-end and a top-shelf cocktail bar as well. So we hope to serve you and see you through the doors downstairs, and we look forward to having all of y'all.
Thank you. Yes. So exciting. I know I'm excited about it. And I wanted to give a big shout out to Texas Liquors, but also Moonshine. They've been bartending, and they just do a fantastic job and go above and beyond. So she's out there. Thank you. Appreciate you. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Santa Rita Market that provided these desserts tonight. That was so, so nice. So thank you. And also, I want to give a shout out and bring on stage the musician that has been here playing to create that ambiance when you walk through the door. I wanted to give him a chance to introduce himself to everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Studinger. I love playing the fiddle, and I like the piano as well. I'm an engineer. Worked on everything from space engines to downhole tools, and I design and invent and build anything from wrenches to entire factories. So I love this sort of thing. I love what Chris has been doing for the community and everyone she's been getting together. It's awesome.
So I just love the people in our community. He's like, I love to play fiddle. Oh, and I build space engines and factories. You know, so this shows you don't know who you're sitting next to just because they have a job or they play fiddle outside. Actually, their true story. So another round of applause. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So now we're going to just tell a couple of success stories that have come out of IC, some new ones that you may or may not have heard. So first, I want to bring to the stage a young entrepreneur in our community. IC, when I say it's for everybody, doesn't matter what age or stage of life you are, it is for everybody. Everyone give a round of applause for Presley Winters. So Presley happens to be my daughter, but that is not why I chose her. She has been diligent in wanting to attend, as she will tell you. What pathway of Innovation Collective have you been attending?
Book club, I think. I don't know.
But so she's been learning about entrepreneurial stuff. We went over in the book club how to do business cards, and she's done that. Can you tell everyone the name of your company? Are you shy? Adric and Bat Studios.
It was a misspelling.
So if we could all give her a round of applause. She's a young entrepreneur in our community, started a company selling things at the Art Walk. She's going to start selling things online. She also has a book that's about to be out. So I'm really proud of everything that she's doing entrepreneurial.
Yay.
So now if I could bring up someone else in our community, Mr. Tommy Darwin. He's going to tell you a little about what he's working on and how IC has helped him. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. I have to say I'm somewhat embarrassed to just be me up here. I feel like I'm representing a lot of things. First of all, the thing about your position, Carissa, is that the person who's doing all the presenting and doing all the thinking never gets to thank you. So I think on behalf of everybody in this room.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
For real. For real.
I did not tell him to say that. I just want you to know.
No, she didn't. Okay, so very, very quickly. The product, the process that I'm working on and work with her and several in here is called Now What? And essentially it comes from 20 plus years of work that my wife and I have done, working from 7th grade all the way up, actually through people who are in retirement. And basically, where do you want to go? How are you going to get there using the story that you tell and the ability to construct a business model, right? Now, for a lot of the people that I've worked with, they may be allergic to it. They may not want to think of themselves as entrepreneurs, but so we don't necessarily use the language, but we use the structures and the process. Because as we all know, the key thing is not what the structure looks like. It's not the plan. It's the willingness to take a step, right? To take that step and take the next step and take the next step. And I think that's what we all have in common. So Now What? It's a set of tools. It's a kit. It's a process. We're in the process of getting the website up and going, but we've been doing this in various forms between the two of us for literally over 20 years. And it blends things from entrepreneurship, things from storytelling, things from inquiry-based learning. My wife, her PhD is in science education. So there's kind of this, and it's a commitment to everybody, right? Because the basic premise that pushes this is that everybody is valuable, everybody matters. We need to make sure they know it, and then we need to give them a platform to be able to do something about it. And the other thing I want to say to Victoria, I'm just over a year in this town. I have to tell you, I spent 16 years in Austin, 5 years in San Angelo before I got here. I have never, ever found it so easy to get involved and to be welcomed and to tap the energy that is here as I have here in Victoria. So I'm taking this as an opportunity just to say thank you to everybody who has become our friends and our partners and our colleagues. And I'm happy to report we are closing on a new home here Friday morning. So
congratulations.
we plan to be here. We are staying. So thank you. And thank you, IC. I don't think we take this for granted. I've been involved in a lot of incubators, a lot of accelerators. This is truly unique in terms of its reach and who's involved and where it's going. So this will continue to grow. It's great to see everybody, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. And that's what you'll hear me say, better together, and what are special about our community, and it's the people. I mean, that's just what makes it so great here, is I see everybody cheer everyone else on, and they really get behind one another. So I appreciate each and every one of you. And I'm going to tell one last success story. This gentleman traded his shift. He did the responsible thing. He didn't just not go to work, but he traded his shift because he wanted to be here to meet people, and he just has amazing ideas, and he wanted to share them with everybody. He's a student at UHV, and his name is Casey. Can you please come up here? So Casey, if you could tell them a little bit just about your background and then a little bit about what you're working on.
Well, first of all, how is everybody doing tonight? Good. Oh yeah, that works. Awesome. Alrighty, so my name is Casey Schultz. I just turned 20 years old. I am a business student at the University of Houston. Do you want to actually take a seat? I might be here for a minute.
Okay,
Awesome. Alrighty. I mean, I did find it a little suspicious when I walked in that the bathroom code was the same as my business address, but but I am a business student at UHV. It's really good to see a lot of the people that have already been supporting me early on my journey. One thing that really inspired me and really changed my life, as he probably has to some of you, is Mr. Elon Musk. That man is doing things for this world that we've never seen the likes of before since the time of Tesla. The man Tesla, not the car. So I decided that because I saw the messages and the involvement that this man was pushing, I decided I wanted to get myself an education. And I wandered around Victoria College at 7 o'clock in the morning, just going building from building, talking to whoever I could talk to, and I happened to run into someone named Dr. Chance Glenn, who happened to be the provost of the University of Houston. And I just talked to him on a whim. He so graciously took me under his wing, and he has been teaching me and mentoring me a lot. He is an awesome guy. I always know I can go to him with anything that I need. But while I was having all these epiphanies of the changes to my life I wanted to make, I realized that I really want to dedicate my life and my time to not just, self-service. I really want to service more than just, myself, the people around me, even my community, state, country. I really just want to service the people of the world, because in the end, we're all human, and like it says in the Bible or the Constitution, we are all made equal. So I have really been focusing on the next step for humanity. Damn, I'm shaking. That's
You're
great.
doing great.
So you might have heard before in science terminology that the earth is the cradle for humanity. And, someday the baby has to leave the cradle. And that's the big step that NASA and SpaceX and the United States Space Force is taking, is making us an interplanetary species. And so if you did not know, with the Artemis program in 2025, the United States is going back to the moon. We are putting the first woman on the moon and the first man back on the moon since the Saturn missions. Or Apollo missions, sorry. Not only that, we are taking our next great step, going to our second closest celestial body, which is Mars, which is a very exciting program. I have devised this idea using the ideas of electromagnetic acceleration to have a ship essentially as a aircraft carrier in space as a median point in a gridlocked Lagrange point, so an equilibrium between the two planets, so that its pull is not affected by the sun or either of the celestial bodies. It is in a perfect equilibrium that will act as a halfway point between the two planets. This will be essentially, it'll pretty much be an aircraft carrier in the vastness of the blackness that's above us. This idea is that it will use electromagnetic acceleration to thrust ships through the center of it, so as they make their way to Mars, we can cut fuel usage by almost 50%, because methane is a great fuel for rockets, but it's not exactly like the best environmentally or the best to produce. We do produce a lot of it, but using the least amount as possible for the greatest distance is the biggest goal in the end. Not only that, production on Mars is possible, but that will take time. And this idea, as all things, will take time, and with no air resistance, no sort of resistance through the vacuum of space, once the ship has passed through the center of this big thing in space, this big ship, it'll be a one-way ticket, and there will be no need for rocket reignition until you begin to enter the atmosphere, when the ship will flip itself around, land itself right side up, and Not only that, the ship will act as a halfway point, so if there's ever an emergency systems failure, shifting of cargo, this will act as a halfway point in case of, body damage and any of those emergencies. And
That's amazing. So how can everyone find you online on social media? Can you give them that so they can connect with you? And as well as after this, they can also connect with you.
I'm kind of a hermit on social media, I'm not going to lie. But if you would like to follow my Instagram, you can hit me up on there. If you'd like, ask me for my number after this. But my Instagram is Casey Changes the World.
I love that.
This is just
He's so good at branding already, guys. It's amazing.
This is just one of my ideas. She just happened to really like this one, and I really like this one too. So I thought I'd share that with y'all. But this is a very big change, and we all know, as we're all sitting here, that change starts in the community. So I want to bridge this into something else that I'm working on. So it doesn't sit with a lot of people that because of the pandemic, it has really affected our kids. Kids are constantly trying to find themselves while being hit from every direction with this digital age, comparing themselves to others, not really knowing who they are inside. And so my goal right now is to create a local environment to where kids can come, they can have fun, with positive role models, and they can connect with people, do what they want to do, and really, take the time to not have such a tight grasp on those social thoughts and how society wants them to conform to be. And so what I'm working on right now is I'm building a airsoft and a paintball field just outside of Cuero, Texas. We already have a lot of veterans involved. Veterans are super excited about it because it's not just the kids, but these veterans actually have experience in situations like this. Not that we're going to be like shooting real guns at each other. So it's a chance for kids to connect with adults that are in a professional but fun setting. Connect with kids their age, and they're just able to have a good time, not have to have the burdens of the world and what this pandemic has all done to us. So if anybody would like to help me with that, that'd be a big help.
Well, I love everything that you're working on, and thank you so much for coming up here and speaking. I appreciate you. And I want to give a big shout out to President Glenn, who is with us right now. Talk about innovating and doing great things with the University of Houston. I just really appreciate it. I mean, I know that it's been really good for the students. And also, as he says, he's walking around Victoria College. I know we have quite a few of you, Amy Mundy here. So I appreciate you guys being in this community. It does really make a difference, and it gives opportunities to people that are in this room that I know who have utilized that, as well as Casey, who just spoke. So thank you so much. Appreciate you all. And now for our featured speaker, none other than Mrs. Callie Fromme. Thank you so much for being here. Can we turn this mic up a little bit? This one right here, please. Thank you. Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you. I think that after Casey's changing the world, my lumber stories are not going to quite be up to snuff, but
Your stories will help him learn how to do that better, so you're very important.
But you're very impressive. Well,
Oh,
I don't have any, sorry. It's very expensive these days.
So if we could start out and you can just kind of tell me, where did you grow up and what kind of family did you have?
All right, so I grew up in Victoria, Texas, and I knew a lot of people growing up like Mrs. McCaney and the Lax my whole life. Grew up here with terrific parents, went to Trinity Episcopal, went to Crane, went to Victoria High, and then I went to Southwestern University in Georgetown, Texas, and got my degree in business administration.
So what was your first job?
My first paying job.
Paying job, yes. We've all had those not paying jobs.
So I did do some filing and things like that for Zarsky Lumber when I was probably in junior high, but my first paying job was at Mamzelle. If any of you remember the clothing store Mamzelle, I started working there when I was about 15, selling clothes.
That's awesome. And so then what do you consider your greatest accomplishment in your professional life and why?
So I guess we should back up because not everyone knows the Zarsky lumber.
If you
part
want
of
to,
it.
this is just an open chat at the
All right.
Sparks thing, so go ahead.
So my family had an interest in Zarsky Lumber Company, and that company started in 1928. My father helped grow the company, and that's always been a part of my life. Always. I mean, we couldn't go out to dinner in my childhood without circling the lumberyard. I mean, that was what you did.
I sent her a photo the other day when I was in Port A and I saw the new Zarsky building. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So yeah, she can't escape it. It's true.
Yeah, we have a beautiful lumberyard in Port Aransas, but my whole life was being a part of the lumberyard. So what was my greatest accomplishment? Gosh, jumping way ahead, when I finally did work for Zarsky Lumber as a young adult, I came in and started working for my father. And one thing that I encouraged him to do, because I wasn't in charge yet, was to establish a 401k for the employees. And that doesn't sound like much, but by the time I sold the company, I could not be more proud that some of these guys, and I don't want to say just a forklift driver because I have more respect for them than many other people who you would consider to be far more successful. But some of these forklift drivers or just labor had $125,000 in their 401k. And they would not have had that. I'm certain of it. And to me, that was one of my greatest accomplishments, was that these men, mostly men, had a really nice nest egg because of something that we put into place.
Well, that tells you a lot about Callie right here, is that she implemented that, and she's always thinking about others. And I love that you said not just a forklift driver, that you had so much respect. And I respect you so much as being a part of this community, as a businesswoman, and also just as a friend, and knowing you, because you're so thoughtful and you put other people first. And creating that's huge for people to have a 401k, so they actually can retire. They can do certain things in their life. So that is just really amazing.
Well, and my father passed away in 2013, and many people came up to me in the months that followed that would tell me about my father giving them an opportunity and telling me things like, my son went to college because your dad gave me a job. Your dad gave me an opportunity. Because you have to think back in the era that all the time that has passed. But so many people came to me and thanked me for my dad and what he did to help their families progress and grow. And that's more important to me than anything else.
Well, that's a true legacy, right? And what's interesting, I don't know if you've heard this or not, or if you know, people say the same thing about you. So you're carrying on that family legacy, which is really, really something special. So that to me, when you're building a business and a company, as you point out, it's more than that. You get to know these people. They're part of your family, basically, extended family. And the fact that your father, as well as you guys all created something as a family together for the greater good of your employees. And that speaks measures about you and your whole family.
Well, and back to the just a forklift driver, I swear to you, when your guys are hauling sheetrock and it's 99 degrees and it's a 98% humidity, God bless them. You couldn't run a business without the people that do that kind of work. And I think it's in Proverbs that it talks about knowing the name of your sheep and knowing your flock. I knew the first and last names of every single one of those employees, and I respected them. I didn't care what their education level was or where they came from, but you cannot have a business without respecting every single person that works for you.
And right there, that is something that all of us should take away when you have a business. And I know many of you out there do this as well. You're great examples too. But to have this generational thing where you're putting your employees first and you're respecting them and you know how valuable they are, that is one of the key things when you have a business, is to do that. Because like you said, without them, you can't function.
That's right.
So it's definitely a partnership and an extended part of your family. And so as we're talking about this, it's kind of making me think about your journey with Zarsky Lumber, and then what happened after that, and kind of where has it led you to in your life?
Well, so when I was the president of the company, we were profitable and having a great time. I had a terrific leadership group with me that I relied on immensely, and I was not for sale. I got a phone call one day from a company, a lumber company here in Texas that I knew, and they asked me if I was interested in selling, and I said, no, I'm making money. I'm having a good time. It's a lot of fun. But then a strange coincidence was that the very next day, a different person called me and asked me if I was for sale. So I then had to look at that, and in the end, I had 3 buyers, and I went with the buyer that may have been the low bidder, but I trusted them to take care of my employees because these people were my family. And I went with Kodiak Building Partners, and it's been an excellent partnership. Their model is that the companies that they acquire get to remain the companies that they acquired. They respect the legacy. They don't change your name. They don't change the way you do things. You know, they tweak it a little bit, and some things have to come out of the corporate office. But even if I left money on the table, I am very comfortable with the decision to sell to this company. I mean, they have been wonderful stewards of my legacy, and I don't regret it.
And once again, you were worried about the welfare of your employees and the people that been there in your legacy that you built, and you put that first. And that is just one of the many reasons that I know people in this community respect you as well as myself. And so as you sold that, what did that process feel like as you went through that journey of selling something and then going to the next level of what you were doing?
So fortunately for me, probably around 2000, probably after the recession, so I'm guessing around 2010 or so, we had a potential buyer at that point that also had come to us, and my father was still alive at that time and was pretty with it, and we entertained the idea very seriously, and we ultimately decided that it would be a good idea to sell, and then the buyer changed what they were doing in their model, and it ended up not happening. So that actually was in my favor, because then in 2014, when I had these buyers coming to me, I kind of felt like I already had my dad's blessing. I think that if I had not, it would have been a much more emotional experience, but it really wasn't. It was a completely comfortable business decision, and the process to sell it was just really getting your books together and getting everything lined up to go. And again, the buyer was a fabulous choice. So now I work for them. Most of the companies that they buy, for the most part, the sellers choose to stay in the leadership role of their companies. But as a lifestyle decision, I didn't want to continue running the company if I wasn't the boss. So I work for them in a capacity of communications and culture. I have a fancy title, but this Kodiak acquires companies throughout the country that are building material distributors in some fashion. It's not all lumber yards. And they continue to acquire profitable companies, and we are now at over 6,000 employees. So some of the things, as I said, they try to allow their companies to remain autonomous, but you have to have a few things come from corporate. So I help communicate those things to the employees. And I created an app, not on the scientific end of it, no. Conceptually, I created an app because in the lumber industry and in the building material industry, about 2/3 of your employees do not sit at a desk. So those people don't have email and they don't have computers. So when you're trying to communicate to 6,000 people, most of whom don't sit at a desk, I was really struggling. So we created an app because everyone has a phone. Everyone has a cell phone. So if I need to get something out to people regarding the 401k or our employee assistance fund or whatever it may be, I create the post and they get a notification on their phone, and then they're able to get the news because there's no other way to reach them. And you can't rely on the store managers or the HR managers or the different people to disseminate all the information. So that's been a great tool that we use daily.
That is amazing. She's just like, oh, created an app, came up with this idea. I mean, she's so humble. But also, what I love about it is that you had the insight to see a need that the company had as a whole, and you did something about it. And who better to work with these companies than somebody that you know this industry backwards, forwards, you've lived it literally your entire life. So for me, if you approached me and I was in that position, I would feel very comfortable with you. So they couldn't have picked anyone better, obviously. You know, you're amazing at what you do. And I love that you care about these companies that your company is acquiring because you've been in that position and you know how that feels, and you've also grown up in it, but you also thought, hey, what's an idea that I can do to make it all work more smoothly for the company and also the people with these companies that are working with us and that we're acquiring, and to make it go better. And so I just love that so much, how innovative you are and how much you care about your employees. It's really cool. And when we're talking about takeaways, I've just learned so much that I didn't even know. It's amazing.
Thank you. And I don't consider myself innovative, but
you created an app. Are you kidding me?
Well,
it's amazing.
But one thing that should be obvious to all of us, but it's not that easy, is I have to create these posts in Spanish. So
that definitely is not easy.
No, and one thing that my father told me to do was to continue taking Spanish, but I took French because, that's really useful.
I think most of us think, I'm going to move to Paris and learn French and be there. So, it's this idea.
Thank goodness for my Trinity Episcopal Spanish education through 5th grade, but that doesn't take you far enough. So that is a challenge, but I try very hard to get everything in Spanish because a large percentage of our deskless employees, Spanish is their first language. And if my job is to communicate to them, I've got to figure out how to do that.
That's awesome. And then, so tell me, I know that you are the first woman on a lot of boards. And what does that look like, and how did your journey take you there?
Well, I think truly that's just timing on when I entered the workforce. I've been the first woman president of trade associations, both state and national. And that, rather than talking about me being a woman, I'd rather talk about the importance of associations. I mean, every industry has an association. I'm sure the newspaper people do. I'm sure the furniture people do. The chicken people do. I'm not kidding. But because my father, as amazing as a businessman that he was and a terrific human being, he wasn't a teacher. I mean, he felt like I should have learned everything by osmosis. I mean, there's probably a lot of dads out there that you just think your kids should know. But by being involved in associations in the building material industry, you could go to seminars, you could go to roundtable discussions, you could talk to people who aren't your competitors. You're not going to divulge any trade secrets that are going to harm your way of doing business, but I think that has been a huge part of my success. And also, I convinced my father, who was, and I keep pointing to some of the people that I know, but the generation where you just kept your financial information very close to the vest and you didn't share that kind of information. But I convinced my dad to let me be a part of a roundtable, which was comprised of successful lumber dealers from around the country, and we had a moderator that taught all of us about the benchmarks of where you should be. If you're doing $10 million in business, you should probably have this many employees, you should have this many trucks, your turns, your inventory turns should be at this level, these should be the ratios, and all these things that no one taught me because I was supposed to just know it. But these roundtables were the key to my success. I mean, I really encourage you to get out there and talk to people in your same industry and learn what the norms are, what you should be striving for, and then with an exchange with one another, you can learn how to get there. And in those roundtables, even if a lumber dealer is in Boston, Massachusetts, they might have some logistical things that are different as far as deliveries in a giant city versus us delivering to Cuero. But the same problems are the same problems are the same problems. And those roundtables, I couldn't have done it without that experience and that knowledge and those challenges and being accountable to those other lumber dealers. Because you'd meet every quarter or twice a year or so, and they would say, well, how are your turns doing? And you'd have to show them your books. Here we are.
Is that accountability? Someone told me that word the other day. It's genius. But I really agree with that. It's having that abundance mindset, not that lack mindset, and working with one another. We've been bringing together a lot of businesses here that do the same thing, but they realize that they can actually work together in some ways and learn about each other's problems and not feel so alone in what they're doing. And they can also realize the targets and goals they should be hitting. So you hit the nail on the head, metaphor intended, right? But I think it's one of those things to where I really took away from you the other day when you did the news interview, and then when we talked at lunch about when I asked her to do the fireside chat. She was talking about that it really wasn't a sex issue for her as well as male or female in the industry, that it was more that she knew what she was doing and she was educated in what she was doing, and so she was respected, and that's how she got far. She didn't really look at it as a male-female thing. And I hadn't really heard that perspective before, but I respect that so much because you knew what you were doing in that industry, and when you walked in a room, people knew you could hold your own. And that's really something amazing, and I do respect that so much.
Well, and there are things you lack as a woman in this particular industry. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. But I surrounded myself with people who knew the things I didn't know. And you can't be too proud and have a big ego. After my dad turned things over to me, I had my core of my 3 other vice presidents, and those guys filled the gaps that I didn't possess. And we were a team, and we made decisions together, and we trusted one another. And prior to my running the company, things were a little bit looser, and I just needed, the way I operate, I needed things to be a little more regimented. And I learned right off the bat that you've got to put things on the calendar to make them happen. And that sounds elementary. I mean, y'all probably already know that. But with the very familiar relationship I had with my vice presidents, it's easy to say, okay, well, we'll talk about that later. But no, at the beginning of the year, we put down every date that we were going to meet, and we were going to talk about what was going on, and that just made all the difference in the world, because otherwise, well, yeah, we'll talk about that later, But making it in black and white on the old-fashioned paper calendar, not the electronic version, was just another component of why things worked.
And you found how you guys got in your groove and what worked for you. And I think that's so important in business, is to work as a cohesive team, not be in competition, and find out what tools work best for you. And you did that, and you utilized that. And so I'm curious, how would you define success?
I think that if you are happy to get up in the morning and go do whatever it is that you're supposed to do, then you're successful.
That is a great answer. I could not agree more. That is awesome. So do you have any books that you've read lately that you could recommend to us?
Not lately, but there's some really good books, and they're not very highbrow, like this gentleman who's changing the world was reading. But Malcolm Gladwell, I really like his books. I mean, they're not highbrow stuff, but the information in there is just fascinating. I do love his books. And another one is the Zappos book of Delivering Happiness. It's about the company culture, which is huge. That's a good one.
Can you tell me a little bit about company culture?
Well, it's what drives the success of your company. I mean, do you know the expression, culture eats strategy for breakfast? It's the truth. I mean, you can plan all day long, but if your employees hate you, or if you don't respect your employees, I mean, I think Chick-fil-A is probably a great source of information about company culture. But back to respecting the guys that haul the sheetrock, respecting the person that cleans the bathrooms. I mean, it's all got to be mutual respect. You've all got to be in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. And without that, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters.
That's so true. And I think that what you've done with your company and the company that you're with now, you really have found a way to keep that company culture going and keep that not only going for the company that you did own and what you're working for now, but also share it with us so that if we're out there, we can remember that that is so vital and so important to the success of our business. So I'm curious, if you were graduating college today, what would you do?
I don't know if I would do anything differently because everything you do leads you to where you are today. And you learn, hopefully, I guess the goal is to learn from all the steps along the way, the mistakes you made or the poor choices or just youth. You know, I think that you are who you are because of what you've been through.
I couldn't agree more. And so I'm just curious for you, you've done so many really amazing things and innovative things, and so many people respect you. And I'm curious, who do you respect and who do you find innovative that you've really taken as a mentor and that you really learned a lot from in your life?
Well, of course, my parents were fabulous. No question about that. But professionally, in addition to my father, the lady that ran the round tables that I went to, her name is Ruth Kellick Grubbs, and she is just a super smart person who I respect a lot. She invented this term she calls OTIF, O-T-I-F, on time and in full. And it's a measurement in the lumber business or any business, anyone can use it. Are you delivering everything on time and in full? And that's the goal, is to be 100% OTIF. But she is a remarkable woman around my age who just doesn't pull any punches, and I admire her quite a bit.
And I just learned something, OTIF. That is great. I'm going to start using that. You know, and I do believe that. I tell a lot of people and people who I've hired over the years that just being on time, you're winning more than most people. And show up early, because respecting someone's time is so important. But I love that, delivering in full. You know, bring everything that you've got and make sure that you actually deliver what you say you're going to deliver. And then some if you want to, which is always good, that icing on top. So I'm curious for Victoria, what would you like to see for Victoria's future and where we're growing and where we're going?
I'll be honest with you, this is my home. And when I left for college, it was 1986. So now you can calculate my age. So I moved to Georgetown, Texas, and you meet people from all over, and they would ask where you're from. Well, where's Victoria? How big is it? At that point in time, Victoria was 50,000 people. So here I come back as an adult. Years and years and years and years have passed. I'm still here, and the population is not a whole lot more than 50,000 people. And that's kind of sad, because I think this is a fabulous town. But I am very excited about what's going on right now. I mean, I really feel it. I feel the energy in this community. I feel like we're on the cusp. I think that the Innovation Collective is a big part of that. Where's Mike ATN? I think that the city government and the elected people, I just think we are all in the groove, and we are on the same boat, as I described earlier, and rowing in the same direction. And I look forward to what's happening. I have a daughter that will graduate from college next December, and I think now it's possible she could come back. Woo-hoo. I never would have thought that, but I'm very encouraged.
And I feel the same way, and I know a lot of you have shared with me, you do as well, the energy shift and all of the things that are going on, and people are getting excited, and things are happening, and it's unlike anything I've ever seen. Like you even said that, and if you feel that, I feel that, and I know a lot of you have come to me with the same thing. That means it's happening, guys. This is exciting times. We are living a part of big history and a big change, but a change in a great way where our community, we're still all working together. We still have the core of what makes us great is all the people here, but we're also saying, hey, you know what? Our city is capable. We're the crossroads, but we don't have to be 2 hours to go somewhere great. Why aren't we 2 hours where you can travel to come to us and come somewhere great? And I see that happening, and it's really exciting. And you are just so innovative yourself with how you do things and how you think about things as a business owner, but just as a person, always putting people first. I know you do so much work with nonprofits, as well as just every time that I see you, you're just thinking about people and how you could help them and help them grow, and just thinking about your employees. And I know for me, I took away so much from this of learning about, culture, and that is a key point, but also learning that your employees are so important. Is there any advice that you would give to a existing business owner or a new business owner starting out, the one thing that they should really know, the best piece of advice you could give? Not to put too much pressure on you, I know.
Golly, we could talk about debt, keeping a lot of cash. That's hard, because as far as a professional flaw of mine, is I do think that I am too risk averse. I was always maybe a little bit too cautious, maybe too fiscally conservative to take some risks that perhaps I should have. So I don't know if I would go down that path. So I think I'll talk more about employees and being very, very careful in your hiring, and take your time on the hiring end, but be quick to fire. That sounds harsh, but a bad employee will drag down the whole group. And I think that if you really take your time and hire the right people, that can make a big difference in your business.
And that's so true, because if you have a great team that works as a cohesive unit together, things go so much smoother. You're an example of that. And I just appreciate your insight. And I want to know now at this time, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask Callie? Okay, back there, please.
Hey, Callie, how are you?
I enjoyed meeting you tonight.
You as well. Thank you so much for your comments and story tonight. I have a question, it's kind of a question I actually get asked a lot. It turns out that taking over a family business can be uniquely challenging. And in fact, if somebody started a business, I believe your father started Zarsky, right?
He didn't start it, but go ahead.
Sure, but sometimes you find they're a bit reluctant to give up control, perhaps. And I don't know if you took it over before he passed or not, but maybe could you provide any feedback or advice on for people who have taken, and this is not me, I'm actually asking more broadly because I get asked this a lot, and it's not my case, but could you provide any feedback or advice for people that are looking to take over a family business in terms of how do they add value, how do they deal with maybe a legacy business owner that's looking to transition out, but still is not quite ready to give up control?
Can you introduce yourself really quick?
Oh, yeah. Hey, sorry, guys. I'm Hunter Follett.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So my experience with M&A is very limited. Just from being acquired was really my only introduction into mergers and acquisitions. But now that I work for the company that bought mine, I have more insight into that. So my experience cannot necessarily answer your question, because when Kodiak buys companies, all of them, 100% of them are family-owned businesses, and we only buy, not always, but the desire is to buy a company that has a succession plan in place and has leadership that's going to stay put. We generally do not like to acquire companies where there's a leadership void, because that leadership is part of the value, it's part of the package. So in my case, when I chose not to stay as a leader, again, a lifestyle choice, I had two people in place. I said, this is the guy that should be your president, this is the guy that should be your vice president, and they took my advice, and I think that it's worked beautifully. And for the employees that I kind of anointed, that doesn't sound like a very nice word, but they're making more money. They have more authority. I mean, I think that they couldn't be happier. I think, I don't know. But giving up control is a big thing. And I experienced that with my own father. I can't answer a solution to that.
But I think your insight to it is so spot on that it is, when you give up control, it is very hard, but you left good leadership in place. And I do like that about Kodiak, that they listen to you and they listen to the companies that they buy. And like you said, hiring the right fit of people is so important. It sets you up for success.
Well, and I don't know how many in the room are interested in selling their companies, but or let me back up. If you have a company, you should probably have some succession planning going on. Simple.
Yes, and that's been a lot of talk, is that there are a lot of companies, but they haven't actually set up a succession plan or started thinking about that. And I think that is an important topic to address in the room, just to let all of you guys know. Like she said, if you have a company, start thinking about a succession plan and what that would look like. And if you are going to sell, also what that might look like. And don't be afraid, like she said, to talk to people about it, to get advice, because that's so important when you're doing a big deal like that and moving on to the next phase.
Well, and also, I really wasn't aware of this until very late in my career. You may all know this. But there's plenty of companies out there that on their board of directors, they have outsiders from completely different industries. And I think that's so valuable. And even after I sold my company, I was approached by a lumber dealer. I don't even remember what state they were in, but they wanted me to be on their board. I wasn't familiar with their culture or their geography, but I knew how to run a lumber yard. But they wanted that outsider voice. And I think that that's important. Don't be afraid to get that dissenter or to get that person that can come in and bring a whole different perspective. I think that that's very valuable.
It really is. Okay, there's another question over there, please. If you could please tell me your name and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Brian Billingsley. Hey, Callie. I have a question. So you said that you were approached by somebody, a few years before you actually sold, and kind of worked through that aspect of it, and then you went back and eventually did sell the company. But for small companies, a lot of times there might only be, like you had, one instance of an acquisition. And obviously Kodiak was very familiar with this. That's what they do. They go around, they buy companies. But being a business owner that had not really gone through a lot of the mergers and acquisitions process, did you have anybody that you reached out to? Who did you kind of lean on to say, hey, we've never done this before? And it's not adversarial. You both want the deal to work, but in a way there is an adversary relationship. You want to sell the company, obviously, for as much as you can and get exactly what you want, and they want to buy it for as little as they can and get everything that they want. So who did you lean on? What experts did you reach out to? What colleagues or friends or businesses? How did you approach that process to make sure that you did everything for the best for your employees in the best way that you possibly could?
All right, so as I said earlier, I think it's very helpful and important to be a part of industry associations. So in your field, if you've developed relationships over the years with people that do what you do, then those can be a good resource for you to tap if you have a buyer. But I didn't do that. I happened to use an attorney who was very, very nuanced in buying and selling companies. So I was very fortunate to already have a relationship with someone who was very good at that. And I'll tell you what, from the buyer's standpoint, now that I'm on that side of it, you just go, oh my God, they're using their family attorney. Like the guy that they've been using, their family attorney that does divorces and adoptions and maybe writes a will here and there and has absolutely no experience in an M&A. It's going to make that process much more painful for everybody and much more expensive, and it may kill the deal. Yes. In my industry, there are plenty of people that are specific to our industry that do that kind of work, because even though if you're selling tomatoes or lumber, you can think, oh, it's the same. But the lumber industry is so different. It's so different. And even my attorney was advising some obscene multiples that just were not realistic. because he had never been in the lumber business. Do y'all know how small margins are in the lumber business? I mean, I would say, yes, there's plenty of people like that, but I would suggest, Brian, someone that's familiar with your field.
If you could please introduce yourself.
Sure, David Murphy, one of those chicken people in Victoria.
Yes.
So you mentioned about how important culture was in your organization, and that's a big part of your role now. So what kind of tools and tactics did you employ along the way that helped engage and equip and empower your people to be culture carriers in your organization?
Well, you make it sound a lot more sophisticated than it was. When I had Zarski, a lot of my successes I look back on now, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I was utilizing this method or that method, but honestly, it was just gut. I was just kind and fair and respectful. I wasn't very sophisticated about my culture. And, you know, my dad had told me along the way, you know, if a deal isn't good for both parties, it's not a good deal. And I didn't have any wonderful method to share with you. I just be a good human being.
That's the most important method, I believe, at the end of the day, right? Another question? Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Keisha Smith. I'm a grant specialist for the City of Victoria. You've mentioned a lot about your nonprofit work and the work that you've done that you really enjoyed. Are there any opportunities you haven't been offered yet or haven't taken yet in terms of maybe a nonprofit area that you would like to be involved with? And conversely, are there any missed opportunities that you wish you would have been a part of that maybe no longer exist?
You know, you bring me back, Keisha, to when I first came back to Victoria as a young adult. You know, again, I grew up here, went off to college, lived in Washington, D.C., and San Francisco, and came back home. And the first thing I did was get involved in nonprofits. And I think one of the first thing I did was I became a tutor for the Adult Literacy Council. And then I became a tutor trainer. And I got involved with what was then the Victoria Regional Museum Association, which is now just the NAVE, and a lot of things like that along the way that introduced me to so many wonderful adults, because again, I'm 23 or so at the time. It was so enriching to my life that I'm still friends with some of these people that I met through the Victoria Adult Literacy Council, which doesn't really exist in the form that it was at that time. But over the years, I've been involved in a lot of organizations. I have an idea for a nonprofit that I would like to start, and you know, you asked about success and what is it when you wake up in the morning and you have something you're ready to do. I have something that I kind of would like to do, but in the meantime, I was in Rotary for over 20 years. I'm currently the president of the Victoria 100 Club because I really believe in law enforcement. I dabbled a little bit in that Southside Coalition, which if y'all don't know, Bethany Castro, I mean, she's not with them anymore.
She's amazing.
She's a ball of fire. I mean, there is so much good work in this town and so many good organizations, and I wish I could do them all. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I don't think there's really a void here, but help me if there is. I just think that this town is so fortunate. I think that this is a town of givers and doers, and we're very lucky to live here.
And there really is, you know, people have come up with some ideas. I know at one of our coffee and concepts, a youth center, and now Shannon, she's here. She's like, let's do it for teens. You know, that was a void that we had, and that's how people in this city are. They're like, okay, well, let's figure this out. Let's do it. And I love that you have an idea for a nonprofit, and you know, I'm good at getting those ideas out, so I can't wait. But I think that that's the big thing about the city, as you pointed out, that there are a lot of nonprofits and not a lot of things going on. And I really, truly appreciate you because you do give a lot of your time to those things. So I think she deserves a great big round of applause from you guys because she is so important to our city, such a vital member. I really appreciate it. And before we go, can we take one more question? Anyone have a question? Okay, Donovan. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Donovan Huff. I have a question. Since you know, it's pretty amazing. If you look at, you went from the Zarski and the amount of employees you had there, and now you're at 6,000. You know, I've been in business 20 years now, and just looking at changes in employees and company culture, it's kind of what younger employees value more versus what they did even 10 years ago is completely different. What are the qualities that you would say in a great employee that you look for now? You know, the three things, obviously the basics, showing up on time, doing what you're assigned, but how you've kind of seen that change even over the past 5 years or 5 to 10 years, where that's gone. And if you were hiring employees again for the lumber yard, what things would you look for? Because as people are starting businesses or they're on their journey through through the process here, they're going to need employees at some point, and they're going to need that first hire. Or a company that has 10 employees now, or they're looking to add additional employees. What does that kind of look like? The culture you look for and things. And I know it's a lot, but you know, condensed version of it, if you would.
If I was hiring people today, which I'm not in that capacity anymore, I value a sense of professionalism, even if you're not educated or if your job is not a professional job. It shows a little bit of self-respect, you know, some manners. I mean, it's very simplified, but just today I had the opportunity to be in a shop, my son getting his tuxedo lined up for prom. The young lady that helped me couldn't have been 17 or 18, but it was like I was talking to an adult. And I was so impressed with this young lady that I would have hired her. And I think about people that still are at Zarski that are amazing employees, and I think, oh, if I just had a business, I'd take them, because you know, when you've got a good person, it's a good person. And I'm not answering your question, but a professional and manners and a desire to work that's so simplified, but that's hard to find. Someone who's maybe got a little humility and doesn't mind doing some of the hard things. You know, being in my business, in the lumber and the construction world, a home builder told me that a young couple who comes to buy their starter home now thinks that their starter home should look just like a smaller version of their parents' home. And they don't recognize the journey it took their parents to get to have that home. And I think about the first house that I lived in Victoria, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, no central air, and now I have a much nicer version of home. But I took all those steps along the way to get to where I am now, and I'm kind of going back to a younger person. Some of them, and I hate to generalize, but they might come into your place of business looking for a job thinking they've got it all going on, and they don't. They've got an awful lot to learn, and they need to have a little bit of humility and the desire to get to where you are, but they need to understand that it's a process and you've got to start somewhere. So I don't know if that helps.
No, I think that's fantastic, and you're right on. And I think where you keep saying, well, I don't know if I've answered in this, but you have, because I think what you've really honed into, and most of you noticed that a lot of people think we have to do these complicated methods for culture or complicated things about a good employee, what we're looking for. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of these are back to basics. Be a kind human. Care about your employees. Be fair. I mean, it starts there, right? As an employee, be respectful. Have manners. Be on time. Be willing to learn. Don't let your ego get in the way. And that is so valuable, because I do believe we advance in so many things in the world today so quickly, which can be so great. But a lot of things like writing a handwritten thank you note, that goes a long ways. I'm just going to let you know. And it's some of these things that are basics that we don't need to forget, because they are the core of building a great company and being a great boss.
Well, and one thing that you made me remember, my dad certainly didn't pay me well. I don't know if any of you parents who employ your children, it seems like you have to set an example and pay them as little as possible. But also, Zarski was not a high-paying company. We didn't pay top dollar, but I don't know how many times we had 10 locations at the end. I had 200 employees, I had 10 locations, and throughout those companies, I would see people leave for $1 more an hour, maybe $2 more an hour, but they always came back. The grass is not always greener. Money is not the God. Come back to a place where you're treated fairly. You're not worked to death. You're only asked of reasonable things to do. And it was kind of gratifying, not in a I told you so way, but it was a welcome home. Come on back, and we're glad to have you.
And just, I have one last question for you based off what you just said, because I know a lot of employers experience this. For people having jobs and the grass is greener on the other side, do you feel there's a lot more turnover where people just think the grass is greener on the other side, and a lot more job hopping nowadays versus how it used to be?
Well, since I'm not in that capacity anymore, I can only kind of have this view from up here, but I do think there's less loyalty.
That's spot on, yep. And I think there's something so important to have loyalty, and if you have an issue, discuss it with your employer. Just don't make an assumption of what they're thinking. I think that's so important. Be an adult and go to them and tell them their concerns and give them a fair shot to work with you.
Right. If you have the right environment, any employee should feel comfortable going to, if not you, the person just above them with a question or a complaint or an idea. If it's not that comfortable environment, then you've still got work to do.
Thank you so much. I don't know about you guys, but I can speak for you that you've all taken away something really valuable from this conversation. And I just want to thank you again. You'll hear me say a lot that I respect her, and I'm just so happy that she's in this community. And it's true. Her putting people first and your viewpoint and just the basics of culture and how humble you are. I just created an app to make things better for me and the people. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and being here tonight with us, and appreciate everything that you do and that you stand for. If we could give Callie Fromme a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their evening, and I appreciate all of you taking the time to be out here with us this evening. Thank you so much. Looking forward to see you all at the next Coffee and Concepts. They happen the first and third Wednesdays of every month, and our Fireside Chats happen once a month. See you all soon.